The meat of poetry. So, let's talk about the Jotun of the Norse tradition, the Titans of the Greek tradition, and the ancient Asuras of the Hindu/Indian tradition. Now, all of these beings are primordial beings. They all basically are intrinsic in making the reality that we know today, making up the foundation upon which we live, whether it be, the primal emotions that we feel, or the literal founding blocks of reality, of matter, of energy, upon which we live, upon which we grow, or the first guardians when it comes to the Asuras, the first guardians who were tasked with guarding this plane of existence, Earth, for instance, and all at once, later on, turned against their basic duty and decided to become coveters of all that they guarded. That's in the Hindu/Indian tradition. Now, when it comes to the Jotun in the Norse tradition, Ymir was the first ice giant, and Odin, along with Vili and Ve, his brothers, carved up Ymir, killed him and carved him up, and made Midgard, that all the beings that came later may live upon it. Now, what does this mean? What is carving up Ymir and making that giant, that kind of frost giant, into the foundation of all that is? What does that really mean? It means that, I believe that gods and Jotun do exist, but they exist in dimensions that intersect into this one, and intersect into Midgard, to create all that we know. And, eventually the science will catch up, but that's another topic. And this means that, all the matter that we see here, all of the different materials and metals and different liquids on the periodic table of elements, basically came from Ymir. They are the foundational material, and they are also the energy that is employed here to give life to everything. Everything feeds on something else, and the first thing to be fed on was Ymir. He had that life force that everything else drew life from. If we're going to the Titans of the Greek mythology, I know less about them, but the Titans were basically the similar foundation as in the Norse tradition, but they were also very chaotic. What they happened to rule, what they happened to create, was purely based on their nature. They're very primal. They were driven by nature, their own nature, to be parts of this grand project that became creation. And the all of the gods on Mount Olympus basically decided, all the sky gods basically decided that they would conquer the Titans and make that the foundation, basically the fertilizer. They're not necessarily dead Titans because they're really locked away, but that just means confined, bound into their roles. But the Olympians decided that, okay, we're going to make everything on the backs of the Titans. And that's what happened in Greek mythology. Now, in the Hindu tradition and Indian tradition as well, which are kind of interchangeable, the Asuras, the ancient Asuras, were basically tricked into churning the sea of milk with all their strength. And then once they thought that, they would get something in return, but they didn't. And Vishnu basically put them at their task. And without getting into further detail, the Asuras do perform a role in lower dimensions and in this dimension, upon which all sentient beings, life, Prakriti, and the sky gods, the Devs, and the gods that are higher above them, Vishnu, the god of preservation, Shiv, the god of destruction, but really reconstruction or deconstruction, and Brahma, the creator. And only the creator Brahma is not worshipped as Vishnu and Shiv. And this is because the creator Brahma He creates, but he expects something to be produced purely in the act of creation. He expects creation to be something in and of itself, but it isn't. It is what is behind creation that brings meaning and ultimate reality into perspective for all of us. Now, all of these beings are very primordial. They are very intrinsic to our lives today, even if we don't know it, as they crisscross and make these different building blocks to the foundation of our civilization, of all civilizations, of that point from which we can spiritually progress beyond just being a part of a collective. Individuality at its peak, allowing every single soul to progress beyond what is expected of that soul, what that soul is basically inhibited by, as far as the ego desiring material things here. The soul works towards getting rid of that ego, which binds them to the things that it values. In talking about all of these primordial beings, we have to look very carefully at our own motivations. What are we motivated by? And what will we use this primordial energy and these primordial beings for? When we look at ourselves, we have to truly look at if we have the desires of the Titans, the primordial beings, where we're driven by impulse, driven by nature, driven by our own desire to expand. Or are we driven by qualities that transcend these Titans that are the foundation of reality? Are we driven by the Asura, Odin and all of his children, Thor, his wife Frigg, his blood brother Loki, his son Balder? Are we driven by these intrinsic understandings of ourself within, or are we driven by the primordial instincts of the Jotun, or something like the Titans? Now, all of these tales are true on multiple levels. Now, when we look at our own subconscious, we have to address our own subconscious through mythology, because we relate to the grander universe through how we deal with these emotions, with these desires, with these really greedy and tedious obsessions with coveting things. And do we toss that aside? Do we decide to become one with everyone? Do we decide to help everybody else in place of ourselves or alongside ourselves, so that we can all move forward to higher and higher realms where beings like the Asura exist, and there are higher realms than that, higher realms than Asgard. We have to look at our own subconscious and realize that the Titans exist there just as the gods do. The gods exist in our subconscious as that higher pulling, that higher motivation to be one and to appeal to our own sense of order. Or are we drugged down by our carnal senses, our obsession with material and owning things? We choose if we go towards the Jotun or the Asura. We choose if we are satisfied with nature, like the spirits of the Vanir, the gods of the Vanir. Are we satisfied with production here, fertility here, and existence on this realm, or do we seek higher consciousness with the Asura? Now, all of these complex ideas are very much meshed into a single symbol, which is the Valknut. Now, the Valknut is a symbol I hold very dear, because the Valknut is the inner relationship of both the higher gods of the Asura, the Vanir, which are gods of time and nature, and the Jotun, which are gods of carnality, impulse, desire. And the relationship in the Valknut is something that exists within our own minds, within our own very being. And the more we learn about, what we at first glance would consider small symbols, little symbols like the Valknut, the more we learn about that, the more that we learn that the symbolism exists within us, within everyone, and that we have to address these certain Jotun or Titans or Asura or gods within. And once we decide, once our inner battles are worked out in this lifetime, then that determines which direction our soul is progressing, up or down. And before the next lifetime, before the next incarnation, we can experience the fruits of our labors. If we're dragged down, then we experience the place where people are dragged down to, and then we get to choose again after we rise back up to Midgard, from hell to Midgard, or from the place of the serpent that exists down there, Nidhogg, even further below hell, upon which all the oath breakers and liars and those who hold nothing dear but only seek for personal gain go even below hell. And in Norse mythology, hell is really where consciousness is recycled. It's where you go to rest before. It's where your ego goes to rest, and while your soul, your consciousness, is recycled into another reincarnation. That's just one idea and one small explanation of what the relationship to hell and Midgard is, hell and earth is. But hell in Norse mythology is in the Norse pantheon that actually exists, I believe. Has very much to do with the levels of acceptance of reality. If we only accept that whatever we want is just, whatever we want is right, then we will be dragged down further than hell into the realm of Nidhogg. But hell is a place where people go, where they just kind of process all that's happened. And if we die in battle, or we basically follow the rules of nature, of the highest virtues of nature, then we might go to Asgard, or the realm of Vanaheim. And if we truly embrace the virtue that humanity is capable of, we go higher than the realm of Asgard. We go higher into realms that make up the fundamental nature of purity, of relinquishing fears and desires. And once we start merging to that higher and higher reality, we start to realize that we're not an individual. We are one with the source, and in a sense, we are gods. So, these are some things to think about. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this has been interesting. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. It helps the channel out, and I would appreciate it. If you want to agree with me or disagree with me, feel free to shoot it down in the comment section below, and I will see all of you in the future. Rise up, brothers and sisters. Rise up.